Bruce and Jarrett, it's a pleasure that, for you guys to come and spend some time with us. We're super excited just to connect with you. We know that you guys are a couple that's been engaged now and soon to get married. And we really just want to welcome you to our Bendia platform. We look forward to spending some time on this journey interviewing you guys.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
welcome to yes time. So let's just hear a little bit about both of you. Tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Cool. Should I start?
Yeah, start.
All right. I'm Bruce. I'm 28. I grew up in Arizona. I moved to Atlanta after going to school at ASU, which is where me and Jarrett met. Best move of my life, so that our paths could cross. From there, we've been now in Los Angeles, Southern California area for about 3 years, figuring it out. Loving West Coast life here, though. Been engaged for a little bit longer than we anticipated at this point. Should have gotten married about 1.5 years ago. Still holding out. But it's okay because we'll still be together.
That's awesome. That's great.
And fast intro, you guys already know this, 32 years old. Had a Southern Baptist Christian upbringing in Virginia before going to Morehouse, and lived in Atlanta and loved what I call old Atlanta for the last 13 years. And, I'm sure we'll dive into it, but I don't really feel like I left Atlanta on my own terms, but happy to be in LA. Not a bad place to land and not a bad place to be with our 2 dogs who could make an appearance at any moment right now.
That's awesome. Well, great. So, Bruce, you briefly hit on it a little bit. You mentioned, you guys met in school. Can you expound on that a little bit more, you guys, in regards to how you met?
Yeah, well, we met after school. I graduated at Arizona State in 2014 and then moved to Atlanta. What?
We were working. We had jobs. We were probably buying.
Fair. We met in Atlanta in 2014, 2015. Recognized each other from the gym, but we really met at a bar. Tale as old as time. And we started dating very quickly after meeting, I think. Within a few months we were exclusive. Within a few more months we were really exclusive, like
living together.
Took off real fast. Very fast.
That's awesome.
Okay. So tell us about your decision to leave Atlanta and go to Newport. Tell us about any challenges that may have presented in your relationship. Just tell us a little bit more about that.
And then also to add on that, if you don't mind, Jarrett, I know that you owned a house here in Atlanta that you ended up selling, I believe, as well. So maybe walk us through just that entire process and what that looked like for you guys.
Yeah, that really goes hand in hand. I think about, obviously we all went to HBCUs and we have very, what I call very Black upbringings, right? And so home ownership is really, really important to the Black community. And so to be able to purchase my first home at 24, and it was my ideal home, at the risk of sounding arrogant, it wasn't a starter home. It was like, this is the house that I want, and I managed to get it, right? And so I grew very attached to that house that I lived in for 7 years. And so the worlds kind of collided where, if you think about where the world was politically, socially in 2018, it was really a turning point for us, right? Where the whispers got really loud. And so there's this intersection of, I am a Black, gay man in corporate America in an interracial relationship in the South. And I thought that up until that point I could manage it, but I really felt like, hey, this is having a direct impact on my career mobility, and that's a problem for me. And so in so many words, the business says, hey, look, we're in a really traditional industry. We're in the South, and our suppliers and partners are in Alabama, Kansas, call it your Bible Belt and very conservative states. They don't want to do business with a black gay guy. So you can have any of these jobs, but you will not get any of those jobs. And I thought, well, if I'm going to be limited, I'm out. And so luckily, Bruce had been presented with an opportunity several times. And when I say the stars aligned, they really did, for us to move to Newport. And so, again, earlier I said I left, or we left on what I didn't feel was our terms, because we made the decision to move to Newport. We put the house on the market. It sold the same day by the time we got off work for what we asked for. So maybe we should have asked for more. But it was appropriately priced, right? Because if we have to do a cross-country move, I don't want to be negotiating with you. Just pay this and I'm out. And so I moved to Newport without a job. He was working, and I think that could put a strain on a relationship where I've been at home all day and I'm ready to interact and engage, whereas he's ready to disengage and have some personal time. We're in a space where we didn't have a lot of friends, so we have to be significant other, confidant. We are everything to each other in that new space. And I don't know, I wasn't from the West Coast, so I thought it was really a transition. I had to get used to it.
It was a big adjustment for you more so than me, because I grew up on the West Coast, so I'm familiar.
Mhm.
But also, we had never really experienced a big life change like that. We had never moved together. I had moved into your house, but that wasn't the same. So this was a really big experience that I don't think in the moment we realized, but now, having gone through it and having moved cross country with a dog, selling a home.
In a 1-bedroom apartment.
Downsizing significantly.
From a house with a finished basement to a 1-bedroom apartment.
Everybody.
Even the dogs wanted to go back to Atlanta. They were like, we're in the ghetto. We need to go back.
So I do want to, I want to dive a little bit deeper, around the piece where you mentioned leaving Atlanta, right? In Atlanta, Atlanta, I believe, is, if it's not number one for the highest population of African Americans, it's at least number two. And then moving across country to Newport, and we've been there. We met y'all there and had drinks and hang out and spent time hanging out together. And the environment is different, right? It's not black. It is, it's not, right? So it's a lot different, that transition. So I'd love to hear more about your perspectives and how that transition really played out for you and how you found that balance, and maybe even like your group that made you like comfortable in regards to like, hey, we can hang out here, we can have fun. I know it may not be Atlanta, but what does that look like for you guys, or what did it look like for you?
I'll be really succinct, because I think it's a clear walk from where we started to when did we get comfortable, and that's within the last 9 months, and we've been here almost 3 years. So I think when you live in Atlanta, of course, it is number one for African Americans, especially as a working population, but it's also a diverse community. So there's more than just any one race in a major city like that. So moving to then Newport Beach, which is the wealthiest county in the United States, where you see homes on the market for $50 million, and multiple people are touring this house. Strange to me, but okay. So now you have a lay of the land. It's like, obviously this is not a really diverse population. And so there were a lot of times that I struggled to connect with people. There were many days, and I would start counting. When you talk about mental health, I started counting, how many days can I go without seeing another Black person? And at one point in time, I got up to 6.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going crazy. I'm not going to make it. And it got to the point where when I did see a Black person out, we would all look at each other like, oh my God, what are you doing here? Do you live here? Take my number. Are they treating you okay?
Right.
So, to be more succinct, we actually um, moved to LA County, which is where we live now, um, between Venice and West Hollywood, after George Floyd and all the things that started to happen during the pandemic, right? So that's really where we started to find some balance. And LA is a lot like Atlanta-ish, but um, you have to make even those tough decisions, especially when you're in your community all the time.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was a challenge, I know, for you, but I also felt challenged because we moved here because of a job or because of my job. And I know that Jarrett was very willing to do it, but to be the reason that we moved somewhere where he is unhappy or when he is really trying to find his own level of comfort and where he can be happy and being pretty powerless in that way was challenging. But then I think ultimately once the pandemic hit and everybody was remote and we had more options available to us. Like we were not married to Newport Beach anymore. You know, ties were cut and we broke a lease. We moved to Los Angeles and I think instantly breathed a sigh of relief and felt like, okay, this is a little bit more a place where we belong.
Okay, well, let's fast forward to COVID when you guys are finally starting to feel comfortable. What's been some of the challenges that you faced? Obviously, many of us have some of the same challenges, but tell us a little bit about your experience and how things happened when we found out that this pandemic was here to stay.
I think the first one that comes to mind, Jared already mentioned, and that would be, living in 980 square feet with two adult men and two adult dogs when you entire life is in this apartment and we're kind of every morning it's like a meeting of the meetings. Like, what time are you on phone calls today? Which ones do you have to be on video for? How can we tag team the kitchen table or stagger or whatever? So, I mean, that was an adjustment. It's still a daily adjustment, but I guess we're used to it at this point. Um, doesn't cause any fights or anything. It's a challenge. Managing schedules, managing phone calls.
I think the pandemic taught everyone, and definitely Bruce and I, to be more aware of giving yourself and other people some grace. So
Mm.
I work in healthcare, and there is this level of fear that exists where I am in, I have to work and I have to be around other people to some degree. So I have not been 100% remote. Then I also, the core of my business are people who are already immune deficient or immune compromised, right? So you have all these thoughts in your head, excuse me. But then it's also like Bruce likes to be at home and I don't. So how are we working through some of the challenges he mentioned, like our schedule? We've got all these things in our backpack where he's bringing his office home. I'm bringing the stress of keeping patients alive home, but I don't want to be at home and I want him to go somewhere with me, but he doesn't want to go anywhere. It's just like, how do you give yourself and others grace and stay mentally healthy? And you also just signed contracts for thousands of dollars for an event that isn't going to happen when you thought it was.
Yeah, and you actually that's an awesome transition into the next question that we had for you revolves around you guys get engaged. This was pre-COVID where everything just felt normal, or what we thought was normal in America, hanging out, having fun, celebrating your soon to be nuptials, and boom, COVID hits us in March. And at that point, I remember, India and I talking about like, hey, I wonder what they're going to do, about their wedding. And ultimately, you guys decided to push it back and push it back. Can you talk us through just what that process looked like for you guys, how you made that decision, and how you were able to just think through it just in general due to the implications of COVID in your overall wedding. How did that really land and resonate with you guys?
Yeah, it didn't to me feel like we really made the decision. It kind of felt like it was made for us, at least the first time. And I didn't really feel emotional about it in any way. It kind of, you're so powerless against the reason why, so you just have no choice but to go with it. So we pushed it back one time. We were originally supposed to get married in October of 2020. We moved it to June of 2021. Now, 2022, pencil us in. But it's super unemotional, I think, for both of us. It just kind of is what it is a little bit. And maybe it's selfish or whatever, but I'm okay with it because I don't want to see a face mask at my wedding. I don't want to see saran wrap covered food at the wedding. I don't want to have a wedding despite COVID and like make it work. I want it to be the day that we can look back on, in 30 years and think that it was the day that we wanted and that we're happy about.
Yeah.
With all of our family, no less, because as the pandemic got worse and people started saying, I don't think I'm going to be able to come, then, at that point, it's not worth it to share it with, or to not be able to share it with the people you want to.
The only thing I'd add is, much how Bruce doesn't want to have saran wrap and whatever else. I'm a finance person and I don't want to pay for that. I don't feel like that's the experience that I had in my head. And so I'd rather wait when I can have or we, I should say, can have the memories to where I keep coming back to this, but getting my family on board with our lifestyle was a process. And now that we're there and Bruce has his own relationship with them, I don't want to cut them out. I don't want to have to decide who gets to come and who can't. And a different way of saying that is, who am I willing to put at risk and who am I not? So I was happy to delay. And what it turns out to be is this wedding should be on Eventbrite at this point, because everyone is like, I haven't been anywhere in a year. Can I come to your wedding?
We're about to start selling tickets.
Right.
Everybody's showing up 100%.
Right.
There's a cover.
They're making fake invitations. They're copying them.
So, what advice would you guys give to a newly engaged couple during this pandemic?
Did I go first?
Would you like to?
Yeah, I think the advice I give to newly engaged couples is think of why you want to get married. More often than not, it's not for the wedding. And so we are not going to have a wedding for a few years, but I think we're at the point now where we're just going to get married. So we're going to have Zoom calls with the state, do whatever you have to do to have that process, because I think the pandemic has forced us to think about what's important in our relationship, what's important to us, and what's important in our life goals. And the union is at the core of that more than the wedding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. To me, that's a perfect answer,
Yeah,
right? And like, being married now going on 5 years in October, I would say, it's similar for us in regards to like, it's really about the actual like being married, right? Versus the party, shouldn't just say the party, but the wedding, right? Like the most important part is exactly what you just listed. So our last question revolves around what keeps y'all connected, right? Like knowing your styles, knowing, Jared, that you mentioned, like, I don't like to be in the house. I like to be out. Like I want to, go out, do this and hang out. Like, and I'm a social, butterfly. And Bruce, you being more of a homebody, and now during, COVID, unfortunately, like we are forced to be home. So what has forced? I shouldn't say forced. What keeps you guys connected and energized, during this process?
What do you think? Do you have an answer?
I do. Let me refine my thoughts this way. I cannot imagine my life without Bruce.
Mm.
And so I think of the moments where, can I be more patient? Can I be more kind? Could I give more grace? And a lot of times, do I care about the thing that could be a thing right now? I think most of the time we just want to laugh and focus on the positive. That's been another teaching from the pandemic, or highlight rather. So I think we just stay connected because we are generally in love with one another and nothing's forced. And I'll take that 85, 90% of the time, and manage through the 5 to 10, 15% of tough. But I'm okay with that. I mean, life's not perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think that very similar to what you said, the minute that we got engaged, I really felt a physical change in the relationship, or at least in my mindset with it, and where everything just felt instantly more permanent. So my whole mindset was then, okay, in the grand scheme of our life together, what matters? Does this matter? Does, him not cleaning a dish matter and leaving it for me?
He doesn't close drawers.
Not really.
He doesn't close drawers.
Sometimes it matters.
Some days it matters.
Some days.
I was still using that cup.
Ultimately, however, not important. Small potatoes. So I think I got a lot of perspective in that moment, or in that time of our relationship, that I didn't expect and that I didn't anticipate. I didn't know that happened to people when they got engaged. That was really cool. I'm really excited to see what happens when we get married. Don't tell us.
And how a baby impacts the dynamic.
Level after level after level.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, listen, guys, we love y'all. We really do, and we appreciate it, and like being a part of your journey as well. And it sucks that it's been over a year and a half now since we've seen y'all, and like, just due to the pandemic and us not being able to make it out to California. But we do look forward to celebrating you guys in 2022.
Yes, when it's appropriate, we will. The best celebration.
Absolutely. But
Yeah, we want to come to the baby shower for baby number 2.
Oh.
All that.
We will keep you posted on that, okay? Because we got our hands full, but we love you. We really do, and we want to thank you again for spending time with us and going through this interview. We appreciate it.
For sure. Thank you, guys. We love you too.
Refreshing to hear, love stories, basically, again. And so thank you for really just being open and honest with us and everybody, and sharing with us. So we thank you.
Yeah, thanks for what you're doing too. This is awesome.
Good to see you guys.
Likewise, even though it's virtual.
I know.
All right, we're going to let you guys go. We appreciate it.
All right, you take
Thanks,
care.
guys. Talk to you
All right,
soon.
see ya.